It's a couple weeks till 3S launch, but we got one to test out. You won't see this for a minute, but let's check out what they sent us with it, because this box is way too big for just a 3S. Always use that small, sharp unboxing knife. Safety first. I really love how this has a curve on it. It's so much easier to unbox stuff with a curved blade. Keep that in mind when you're at home trying to open stuff. Look for a curve and always point that knife directly towards yourself. Like my new sheath spot, just figured that out today. Sword storage. Okay, that's actually kind of cool. We have got, the squishy light bleed facial interface I told you all about from the testing. We have got the new compact charging dock. Bubble wrap to play with later. The compact carrying case, the goods themselves, the Quest 3S. I also dug out a Quest 3 box while I was at it, just for comparison's sake. Weird how the 3S box is like significantly bigger. We'll do some size comparisons and see, but maybe the 3 itself is a lot wider. The Logitech MX ink pen. That's a surprise. I knew it was coming, like it was coming out, and then we got one Quest 3 sweater. As you can see, it's got both of them on the back. That's kind of fun. It's got the Meta symbol though. I still miss the Oculus one, but now we might talk about accessories later in the video, but for now, what we are here for is we want to get this 3S out of the box, check this thing out, and start our review and comparison so that by launch, I can tell you all what I think. It says on it, game includes Batman Arkham Shadow, and that's why it's got a teen rating. It's not just teens that can use the headset anymore. They've lowered the age requirements for Quest overall. It's definitely a chunk bigger. They sent me a 256 gig, so this is technically the $400 model. Although this does drop at a $300 price model, which is probably the one most people are going for. Because if you're going 400, why not go 500 and just get yourself a 3? Way better lenses. We'll get to all that. Oh, this is one of the first times I can say the box is opened like this. Kind of breaks apart and drops down, kind of like how they do the Ray-Ban boxes now. And this is our very own Quest 3S. Now, if you've been keeping on the channel, you know I've gotten to hold one of these. I've gotten to play with one of these a little bit so far, but this is my first time getting one brand new out that they have not changed accessories on. Tells you about your glasses spacer. If you're familiar with Quest 2 or anything, you're familiar with that already, but if not, basically the facial interface pops off. You put a spacer in that gives you a bit more distance between the lenses in your eyes for your glasses to fit in place. Protective lens covers on the inside. Basically, they warn you don't let any light in, don't use any liquid on them. And these lenses are gonna look extremely familiar. I actually dug out an old Quest 2 just for this. So, I mean, you can see these things side by side. I truly believe they are the same lenses, the same housing. It's even the same resolution screens inside. Somebody in the comments mentioned the Quest 3S is the Quest 2.5. And from my experience so far, I would say that's a pretty fair assessment. Back to that horrible head strap. Tightens the same way as the 3 head strap. You can go like this to tighten it. You can go like this to loosen it. And then of course you got the top that you need to bring up. Oh man. In hand and on face, it feels so Quest 2 like it's really the internals, the extra button, the things that separate it from being a Quest 2, but it just feels like a familiar old friend that I have moved past and didn't think I was ever gonna be returning back to, and here we are. It does come with the exact Quest 3 controllers, exact same ones, which means accessories, grips, all that will fit the same way. And it is a slightly nice change from a Quest 2 perspective because you had that big tracking ring up here. You're less likely to bang these into anything, including your face, each other. They just really fit in your hands. A few quick accessories here. We got a brick that has a cover on it for some freaking reason. When this didn't come with any covers, usually there's covers on them. We have got very bad lighting, makes this very hard to read. 18-watt power brick, which was what we were expecting. We have got a USB-C to USB-C power and data cable 4-footer. A nice smaller power brick because a lot of times, you know, you have an extension cord, you have a power strip, and you can't fit a bunch in them. This looks like it's not gonna take up much more room than a normal one. And that's pretty much that. Some of you save the box as like a carrying case for the future, which I think is a totally valid thing to do with the past boxes. I will say I am not in love with boxes that come with this design because they don't work very well for that. You really probably want a case because trying to reuse this thing, shove your whole headset in here over and over again, it's kind of a pain. So honestly, that will probably be the last time I see this box. I'll throw this on a shelf somewhere and never deal with that again. Let's play around real quick. I'm gonna open a stock Quest 3 because I just wanna have one in hand side by side. But see what I mean? How like this is an easy carrying case to use for your Quest 3. That thing is like all in pieces. Side by side already, you can see where It's a little bit thicker, it's a little bit chunkier, but it's not as bad as I would have expected it to look side by side. And the way I'm aligning these right now, if you're wondering, since I'm not sitting on the desk, is I'm aligning them basically by their speakers and their arms on top. So that is a more accurate representation of how far they're gonna stick off your face. So really the way the Quest 3 sensors stick out, it's actually not as big as I expected. If we take a look at like a Quest 2 here, I don't have a facial interface on this Quest 2 right now, but you can still see how, boy, if I was to align it by the white on each side, that looks way different. If I was to align it by the edge of the arms, it does look close, it sticks way back. I know a question everybody has been waiting for, and we pretty much figured it out already by the fact that accessories are being sold for both. But since we're here, this is an S3 Pro specifically designed for the Quest 3 long before the 3S was ever breathed of, talked about, or anything. A perfect fit. And pretty comfortable, I'll give it that. So the horrible comfort issues of the 3S are fixable, and I gotta say, looks wise, actually, that looks like a good fit. I feel like it almost looks better than the Quest 3 does because these are all round and then this is round. It looks good together. Means technically I could even interchange the stock straps. The only thing is this one comes with the hole for the aux port, which no longer exists. So if I was to just stick this one on here, it would just have a hole that leads to nothing now. But what I'm wanting to do right now, I'm gonna remove facial interfaces from all of these headsets. Removing the facial interface on the Quest 3S feels a lot safer and less sketchy than it does when you try and remove the Quest 3, because the Quest 3 has this whole feature where you can extend it in and out for glasses wearers. It makes it pretty rickety. And with the Quest 3S, you're back to a solid single plastic one that feels like the Quest 2 one did. We've got 3 stock headsets, a Quest 2, no facial interface, no strap, 413 grams. A Quest 3S, 403 grams, which is surprising because it technically was supposed to weigh more than this, but that means the accessories must be where the weight is. 397, 403, 413, 414. All right, a little bit of data right there it'll take from. Let's check a couple more things. Facial interface from a stock Quest 3, 71 grams. Quest 3S, stock facial interface, 59 grams. Quest 3S, completely stock, 519 grams. We were told 514, I believe, by official specs. 523. So yeah, obviously this is a kitchen scale. This isn't the most perfectly calibrated thing ever, but I will say the weights weren't quite what we expected. It's not enough that's gonna make a huge difference, but I am surprised the fact that this thing itself, if you take everything off, it does way less. So now luckily, thanks to the Quest program sending out some of these early, I do have this quite a while before launch. So I'm gonna take it away. We're gonna do game testing. We're gonna be trying to see how the frame rates hold up on the new Quest 3 exclusive games that we can play on it. We're gonna be playing with accessories and checking out how they work and really trying to get you the final answer of who is this headset for and should you buy it? And if you had a Quest 3 or if you still have a Quest 2, if you don't have a Quest at all, is it gonna be the best headset for you to buy to start out, to jump into VR? Or if you just want an extra headset beyond your Quest 3 so you can play co-op or something with friends and family? These are all the questions we're gonna try to answer over the next couple weeks while we're checking this out. So I'll be back with you. We got a lot of testing to do. Be back soon. So first battery test of the 3S was a little disappointing. Mixed reality, 1 hour, 51 minutes, although that is much better than the Quest 3 when we tested it. Mixed reality, it lasted 90 minutes. So the claims of what Meta tells you for the average battery life on these headsets are both exaggerated in my opinion. We'll be doing more and messing with it more, but for the first round, they claim it's 2.5 hours on the Quest 3S, 2.2 on the Quest 3, and we're seeing drastically lower numbers than what they claim. Expert Plus Beat Saber would tell me that tracking just the same as the Quest 3. If it was slightly better, it's hard to tell, but I can still SS songs that I'm familiar with. So still good, not lighthouse tracking like you get with the Index or something like that. One thing that I'm noticing right now, I'm missing for sure, no headphone jack means I could get my earbuds back out and plug in my low latency dongle and all that nonsense. But I've actually been using a set of like off-ear speakers on my Quest 3 for a while. Not the perfect solution, but they plug into the aux and I don't have that. But for games like Beat Saber where you really want to get into the music or Supernatural, you just want to rock out while you're doing it, I've got this thing on full volume from here and I just don't have that option. So I'm definitely missing the aux port. So that's definitely something to consider if you care about audio, or especially if you like rhythm games. You just can't get much more audio out of this thing without solutions that aren't always reliable. So this was the final stage of testing. You're seeing a real camera and seeing how dark it is. I mean, literally the only lights are coming kind of from my chair. Some very surprising result on the low light though, especially with the 3S having a pretty major advantage over the 3. So we'll play around with it more and get back to you with that in the final too. It's been a couple of weeks and we are back to talk final thoughts, or at least as final as we can the first few weeks in. But remember, over the next few months, there will be new things that we talk about. There'll be continued updates to this headset that will change things. But for now, for those of you in a real rush, it's a hell of a headset for 300 bucks. We'll get more in depth about it later, but if you already have a Quest 3, you're probably not thinking about this. If you're someone who's brand new to VR and you need a headset right now, at 300 bucks, you're getting a lot from this headset. So I will say that if that's all you need to know, jump down below, buy yours. We're gonna get into the real thick of it here. So let's talk about that. You know me, we usually start with the cons, and I'm gonna start also, because there's so many, with the more surprising ones, the things we weren't expecting. So battery life, we expect that every time Meta tells us battery life, it's gonna be a little worse than we expect. Meta claims the Quest 3 on average gets you 2.2 hours. The Quest 3S, they say, gets you 2.5. When we first tested the Quest 3 back in the day with mixed reality, 90 minutes. No, here I go. Battery has died. Wow, 1 hour and 41 minutes in. With this one, we got 1 hour 51 minutes. I didn't have the brightness all the way up on the headset either, so it could be worse than that. But the extra surprising thing about the battery life was it took another, I think it was 1 hour and 20 something minutes. We have the time recorded, so we'll pop it up here on the screen, to recharge the thing. Pretty much, in my opinion, you're gonna need some kind of a battery strap with it. The headset, unlike any other Quest so far, does not have a proximity sensor on the inside. Typically, they're right here in the middle, which a lot of people go and disable their proximity sensor anyways because they don't like the headset turning on, turning off when they move it, if they have glasses on and disrupting it. But ultimately, it just means an extra step. You put the headset on, you tap the power button on the side, and then it comes on. If you've had a bunch of headsets and you're just used to that, it just feels kind of weird. Every time I put it on, I'm standing there waiting, and I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta press the button again. It does have full color mixed reality pass-through, but because the resolution is lower, the mixed reality kind of looks worse in a way. That may not reflect it all in recordings because the recordings are through the headset. It's from the direct camera. It's not what I'm seeing through the lenses. Side by side through the lenses, the mixed reality looks a little worse because of the lower resolution, because you got the Fresnel lenses, which have more God rays, more glare, a smaller sweet spot. Ultimately, it just feels like if you were to look at these side by side, the mixed reality doesn't look as good, but if you're coming from a Quest 2 or no headset, it does look nice. You can read your phone through it. It does work. Now from there, whether you've owned a headset or not, this headset really feels a lot like a Quest 2. I see people calling it a Quest 2 Plus, a Quest 2.5. Although it does have the internal hardware and the chipset, the new stuff you're getting with the Quest 3, the shell feels very Quest 2-like. The pressure on your face, the way it feels when you're wearing it, the way the weight hangs, the lenses, the same clicks they had from the Quest 2, the screen resolution inside is the exact same as the Quest 2. So it feels very Quest 2-like, but with that comes all of the pitfalls that we had with the Quest 2. You get the VR face when you wear it for any length of time. It's very heavy. You get headaches from it, at least I do, because my IPD doesn't match it exactly. For people who don't know, your interpupillary distance, the distance between your two eyes, everyone's is different, and the best thing you can possibly have is a headset that lets you fully adjust those. But with this one, you have large, medium, or small, and mine doesn't conform to any of those three. So my first test in this thing, I was back to having a headache, VR face, and those are problems the entire VR industry faces. But because I'm used to the Quest 3 or other headsets, it just really reflected back on how I used to feel about it. But it is something I want to caution people who are totally new to VR. You might not realize that spending a little bit more for a better headset might just make your whole experience overall better enough that you play more VR. With this thing on my face, I wanted it off in a half an hour when it was stock, and a stock Quest 3 I can rock longer than that too. So it's an important consideration. And with that, to me, it needs accessories. I mean, you can see already just in 2 weeks how much I've changed the look of this headset to make it fit better, feel better, last longer, keep me cooler, more comfortable. $300 might sound like a really good deal, but you're probably gonna be cranking up the price on that getting accessories. But keep in mind, the Quest 3 also has that same problem. So even if you buy a Quest 3, it's not like, oh, now you have a comfortable head strap and it's great. No, you're still gonna be buying accessories for it too. So basically any Quest headset in the family, you're gonna need to invest more later in accessories to make it feel better for you. And especially to the people who are here because you're looking into getting into VR and you never have before, there are the pitfalls that those of us who are Quest owners have just gotten used to over time. The UI was built by them, Meta UI. It's not the most intuitive. It has glitches and issues that you have to deal with that you're not gonna gonna be used to dealing with because you're used to how a PS5 runs or how your computer runs, your phone. It has all of its own set of problems that we have just learned to deal with over the years. So if you're completely new to it, it might feel really foreign. And especially for people who aren't gamers, when you put them in a headset, even navigating the menus just feels weird. It feels unintuitive because there's nothing out there quite like having hand controls that you aim and point and click at things. If you're totally new, it's gonna feel weird. Probably the biggest problem that I need to bring up, and this is also again with the whole Quest industry, people all the time say, I love my headset, but I don't have another game I wanna play right now. We need more games, we need more games. And a new headset isn't necessarily gonna cure that problem either. Yes, it's cheaper. It'll get in the hands of more people. Developers may pay more attention, but ultimately, if we're still in 6 months from now saying we need better, bigger, more fun games, it doesn't matter what headset you have, you may not have games to play on it. So that's a big consideration as to whether you want to get into VR at all or not at this point in the industry. There's a lot of cons, I know. Not all of them are just because of the 3S, the industry in general, but we got to cover those because for me as a consumer, I usually come into something knowing what's good. I want to know what's bad to fully make the decision. But let's talk about the good things. So some surprises. One, low light. This thing is practically playable in the dark. They've put 2 infrared blasters on the front of it that fire basically infrared dots out so that it can kind of map the room even in the dark. And as you saw versus the Quest 3, this is way better. It continued to hand track even when the room was basically completely dark. So that's really surprising. It means that gone may be the days of adding an infrared blaster to the side of your headset to help illuminate the darkness. That worked really well. Although it doesn't have a hardware depth sensor like the Quest 3, it mapped the rooms fine every time. It worked really well at depth sensing with just software. It seems like it doesn't really need it, and so I can see how they save the cost in doing that. The price is obviously the biggest pro. $299 is not only cheap for what you're getting for a VR headset, the chipset that's in it, this is like a decently powerful mobile phone with so much more attached to it. And when you think about how much phones go for, $300 is not only really cheap, but the Quest 2 dropped with half the storage. Originally, the Quest 2 came in a 64 gigabyte. This is 128. And even if you just look at inflation from 3 years ago with the Quest, that thing should have been $351 now. So this is $300, you get Batman free, which is another $50 game. So the price is way better even than most of us are thinking, because if you actually account for what a Quest 2 should cost now, it is a really great deal. And I've talked so many times about how the Quest 3's microphones suck. The Quest 2 microphones kind of sucked. They've done something better. There's a different array, a whole bunch of dots here. We don't know yet because there hasn't been a teardown which one are all the mics, but it seems like they're maybe taking some inspiration from the Ray-Bans. Maybe they have multiple mics on here so it gets not only that spatial audio going from every direction, but the mic sounded better. Didn't sound a lot better, but it didn't have as much popping. It sounded more natural, less electronic. So in games, in chat, you're getting better mic quality, which was a big surprise when the Quest 3 mic quality was really bad. This is a 3S audio check. We are here in the room where I do most of my sound work. It is pretty well insulated. It's behind 2 sets of doors, and this is about as good as the 3S should possibly sound. This is me getting a little excited, getting a little louder. We're in a game. We just won. This is me whispering because we're trying to sneak through Ghost of Tabor and not get shot. Audio check. We are currently in the room where I do most of my sound work. This room has a lot of padding and work to help deaden any echoes and quiet it down. It's also behind 2 sealed doors, so this should be about as good as the mic can possibly sound on the Quest 3. This is it if I get a little bit louder, if you're talking excitedly in games. And this is if I'm trying to whisper to my friends while we're sneaking through a shooter. You get the same controllers as the Quest 3. If you're coming from a Quest 2 or if you haven't had a VR headset yet, these controllers are nice because they're small. You don't tend to bang things as much with them because the old one had these big tracking rings that used to stick up. They really stay in your hands. They're pretty ergonomic. These straps are not stock. These are something that I got as an additional accessory. And there's a lot of accessories. We'll talk more over the coming weeks as we start reviewing more of the accessories, but I busted some of them out for my time playing with this just because I wanted to be more comfortable. But ultimately the controllers are ergonomic. They feel good in most people's hands. They track surprisingly well for the tracking lights only being on top. Even in the low light, I could actually see, it was weird, I could see through the cameras in mixed reality. I could see the dots lighting up on the controllers, and it was still tracking them in low light with the 3S, which was really impressive. Quest 3 head straps work, although most likely, if you're buying one of these, you probably don't have a Quest 3 already, so it's not like you're gonna have Quest 3 head straps laying around. But if you had a Quest 2, there are plenty of 3D printable adapters you can buy to swap a strap over, or some of the Bobo ones are upgradable to just switch them directly forward. So you've got accessory options right out the gate, which we didn't have with the Quest 3 in the day, and we had to deal with the stock head strap for a while, which sucked. Another pro about the 3S itself, This is now a multiple generation product. You're no longer dealing with as many of the early adopter woes. They've worked on software. We're up to update V71, so 71 updates have changed the software, made things better, added more capability. So you're jumping in less of an early adopter time and more of a, hey, this is a much more finished, much more ready product. It also, unlike the 3, has this action button, which maybe if you've never had a headset, you're gonna find this really handy and use a lot. Drops you directly from immersive to pass-through, so if someone walks in the room, you can be like, bam, hey, what's going on? Switch back real easily. I found maybe it's just because I'm too used to not having the button, I barely ever use the button, but for people who haven't had it before, that might feel like a big plus too. So ultimately what it feels like you're getting Quest 3 hardware in a more similar Quest 2 packaging, but at even cheaper than a Quest 2 price when you figure in everything we talked about before. The big questions people are asking at this point then, if I have a Quest 2, is it worth upgrading? I'm gonna caution a little bit more on that statement than I actually initially thought. The mixed reality is gonna look really good in comparison. The fact that you're gonna be able to play the new games is gonna feel good. You got the new controllers, which they're nominally better, but ultimately, if you have a Quest 2 and you're playing all the games you want right now, should you spend $300 to go 3S? I personally would say hold out. Save up a little bit more. You get 512 gigabytes of storage at $500 on a Quest 3, and a Quest 3 feels like a next-gen upgrade. The Quest 3S feels like a half measure. If you already own a Quest 2, you're happy with it, it's still working for you. If your Quest 2 is completely broken, maybe, but I still feel like saving that little extra and getting the Quest 3 is worth the leap. If you're completely new to VR, you want to jump in, you've never owned a headset, this is going to feel great. It's going to feel revolutionary. The mixed reality, when you try that, the gaming, especially if you're playing a game where you get to move around in mixed reality, it's an amazing experience. I still worry you'll always wonder if you should have gotten the 3. The 3 is so superior, and yes, the price isn't cheap, but the lenses and the screens in it make such a difference as far as how clear it is, the lack of having to worry about as much headaches and glares and God rays. But if 300 was what you had, you want to get into VR today, absolutely buy this. The one headset I would say no one buy, don't buy the $400 Quest 3S. You get 256 storage instead of 128, but you're only $100 from this then. Hold out and get this, or get the cheapest version of this for now. Quest 3 owners ask me, should I get a 3S because it's newer and there's a few things we've said, okay, yes, the battery life is slightly better. It's got an action button, the low light. The only reason a Quest 3 owner should get a Quest 3S, in my opinion, is if you already have your Quest 3, you like it, but you want to have a friend over and play VR with them, and you don't want to spend this much money. You want to have a co-op option with someone in your family in the house. Then you can get one of these too, especially because if you've had a 3 for all, who knows, maybe you've bought a few extra head straps they're laying around because you tried to find which one was right for you. Maybe you only have to make that $300 investment to get this, set it up for someone else. That would be the only case in which owning a 3, you should get a 3S. But it's basically out now. If you catch us on day 1, it comes out tomorrow. You should be able to go to Best Buy and set up demos to test them out too. There should be a lot of other reviews out, so check them out. Make sure you get the full story before you commit to buying. But if you're certain you want a Quest 3 or you want a Quest 3S, there is links down below in the comments in the description where you can get them. I'm happy to see Meta getting something back out there to get developers all on the same page again with the chipset. Get it so that there's no longer these Quest 3 exclusives that people are missing out having to spend all the $500. But ultimately, I will be reviewing accessories, I'll be testing stuff, I'll still be sharing with you. But now that we're at this stage, like even owning one, I can't see any reason I would jump into this instead of the Quest 3. So ultimately, that extra cost to me is still worth it for the 3, for the true next-gen experience, but I'm happy to see there's a good, cheaper alternative option for people who are new to it again. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. I know there's been a lot going on with the launch of this and everything happening. If you got one, how are you feeling about it? If you have a 3, did you get one and why? I'd love to know why too. But thank you so much once again. You've been here with us so long. The channel's growing like crazy with all of you showing up, checking out the 3S content. I really appreciate you. I'll see you in another reality.